I'm reviewing PayPal founder Peter Thiel's book, 0 to 1. I'm going to tell you what it's about and who it's for. Let's roll. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's Kevin from the Startup Hustle, and today I'm reviewing PayPal founder Peter Thiel's book, 0 to 1, Notes on Startups or How to Build the Future. So the first thing I want to get into is really what this book is about. So essentially, the book is hinged on one bold premise, and that is that you need to hit a home run with your product or you're doomed. And essentially what I mean by that is, or what Peter proposes here, is that monopolies are the only way to create sustainable success in a business, and that competition will ultimately erode any value in your business, and it's not a sustainable way of running a business in the long run. And the reason he says that is because he talks about how in a monopoly, the monopoly enjoys, if your business is in a monopoly in any particular industry or product, it enjoys the ability to price as it sees fit. It also has room to innovate and try new things, and ultimately it pushes society forward versus a business that has an immense amount of competition. He sort of argues that eventually your business gets commoditized, or your product will get commoditized, and then at that point price pressures kicks in and everyone becomes the same. Ultimately the consumer wins, but your company doesn't fare that well. And he sort of has a number of analogies about this, but one that stood out was about a restaurant. If we make any kind of restaurant, ultimately, there's so many other restaurants doing the exact same thing that the price and the service level will bottom out, and then at some point everything will become basically indistinguishable, and really that's not a sustainable way to run a business, and maybe a restaurant will close down. Now, so he has this bold premise, and so he also gives some advice on how to achieve this, or some rules. And basically what he says is it comes down to two things. One thing actually, and that is you have to create at least a 10x improvement with your product. And what that means is that basically your product needs to be 10 times better as the closest competitive iteration or a competitor product, or it has to be a brand new product, new to the world type thing altogether, which then by definition would be infinity times better because there's nothing else to compare it against. So he has this analogy where he talks about having a windmill. He talks about if you were to engineer a windmill that's, say, 20% better and more efficient in capturing and retaining energy than, say, any other windmill, and say that's real life performance and not just theoretical laboratory performance, he says that 20% better really won't do anything for you because your competitors' marketing and your marketing efforts and all other distribution type things will make up for that 20%, and there's the switching costs to a customer, and essentially, 20% difference really isn't enough to motivate a customer or anything to sort of adopt your product. And he also talks about essentially how if your product's only 20% better to most people, that's not a discernible advantage. They might not even be able to tell the difference. So, and like I mentioned earlier, there's all the fabrication with marketing, what's really better. But now if your product is 10 times better, then it's an obvious advantage in that it's so much better. It's clearly evident to everyone. And so this is a really interesting paradigm, because it sort of flies in the face of some other theories. And he even goes so far as to say that the lean premise is all wrong, right? Because he talks about how after the .com boom and bust, that people started becoming, or companies started becoming, very risk averse. And so what they did was they basically assumed that they know, the whole lean philosophy is, assume nothing, test everything, build the smallest version, the customer knows best, make sure you do a lot of discovery with the customer and sort of form that, product centric and form the product around the needs of the customer. And so he says that, that approach is wrong. and that's going to create those iterative products which really don't do much for innovating the world and for a company, and that rather you just have to have a clear direction and and just be bold and just execute on that. And I see why he's coming from that perspective, because if you are trying to make something that's 10x better or a new idea altogether, I think it's going to be pretty hard to do customer discovery, right? You just kind of have to have, at that point, to be honest, the balls and the vision to sort of do something like that. I think that's a very interesting and important point he raises. That's not to say with a new to the world product you can't do customer discovery. I just think that, he raises this point that it's probably not as useful, and it's probably not as a good indicator of success, right? Just look at any product before it ever came out. I like to give this example of the airbag, right? Whoever invented that, I mean, if you would have asked people in some customer discovery thing, would you like this airbag to blow up in your face that protects you, like when you crash, this bag that explodes in your face in microseconds that protects you, but it could leave a bruise on your face, but it'll save you? I find it hard pressed to believe anyone would have, one, mentioned a solution like that, two, even appreciate it. It would sound insane to them. But the problem is that you could probably do some discovery around the problem, like, hey, people want to feel safer in a car. But without digressing too much, what he proposes here is that the whole lean stuff, that's good for iterative type work, but if you're really trying to build new to the world things, then you need to be bold and have a clear direction. And he actually has a 7-step process to kind of help you along these lines. He doesn't sort of just leave you. He has a 7-step process, and this is some of the stuff in the book now that's a little less novel. It's the importance of balancing sales and production. He talks about starting small in a beachhead market, and and getting a foothold in a small market first, and then expanding. And he gives examples of how Facebook did that on Harvard campus and whatnot. And he has a whole chapter regarding how success is about planning, and he's being deliberate and has nothing to do with luck. He has this whole little thing about you're not a lottery ticket. But again, some of this other stuff in the book, it's nothing you've never heard before if you've been reading a few startup books over the years. So who exactly is this book for, now that we've understood essentially what it's about? I would say that it's really for any product entrepreneur. And the reason I say that is because we've all been hammered to death over the head with this whole idea of, the whole lean philosophy and being very agile and testing everything and the minimum viable product and all of these things. It's actually refreshing to see the opposite perspective. Now, I'm sure there's scenarios where both work. They're both very different ideals. But it's actually interesting to at least see that other perspective and have you consider that, because you always want to be able to be a balanced person and consider multiple perspectives. So to me, it really made me consider that. Is there a way, the product we're building right now, is there a way to make this, rather than, say, if we were planning something iterative, how do we make this 10x better? And, it's really evolved our thinking, and our product has evolved since, with some of these ideas that are a little bit more riskier, of course, but at the same time, it is something that's a little bit more revolutionary. So I think that this book really is for everyone, because just to consider the opposite perspective. Now, on the negative side, I would say one thing that I didn't like so much about this book is that it really doesn't give you any clear reasons as to why iterative type products won't work in the long run. I mean, it gives you that example of a restaurant and a windmill and whatnot, but just as there's been the products that are the Facebooks and things of that nature, the iPods, there's also been a ton of iterative products that have been just as successful, that aren't new to the world, and he really doesn't consider that perspective at all. I think that for that reason, I'd probably give this book a 4 out of 5. It is a little bit more philosophical than it is practical or tactical, which is all right because it's a framework for thinking. But if you're looking for something a little bit more tactical, it may not be directly the book for you, but I strongly encourage anyone who's building a product, again, to read this book. I'll put a link to the book in the description. If you found this video helpful, I encourage you to check out the other videos on the channel, to subscribe. I do new videos every Monday and Thursday. Would love to hear your comments in the section below, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.